Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Common English Decoded. I'm so happy you're here with us today. Whether you're listening on your way to work, studying at home, or just relaxing, welcome. We're so glad you found us.
Hey, great to have you here. You know, I was just thinking this morning, I can't believe how many people are tuning in now. It makes us so motivated every single time we record.
It really does. And you know what? I was actually thinking about today's topic while I was making breakfast this morning. I always make coffee first thing, and I thought, wait, I just used one of our words for today.
Ha! That's perfect. And that's exactly why we love this topic. Today we're talking about 3 words that English learners use every single day, but often mix up. We're talking about always, usually, and sometimes.
Yes, and by the end of this episode, you're going to feel so much more confident using these words. You'll know exactly when to say always, when to say usually, and when sometimes is the right choice.
These are called frequency adverbs, words that tell us how often something happens. And they sound simple, right? But there are some really common mistakes that even intermediate learners make, so pay close attention.
We'd love to hear from you too. Before we go any further, tell us in the comments, what's something you always do every morning? Write it down. Something you always do. We'll come back to that later.
And if you're new here, welcome to the family. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on Common English Decoded so you never miss an episode. We post new content every week to help your English sound more natural and confident.
All right, let's jump in. I'm so excited about this one.
Same here. Let's start at the very beginning. What do these words actually mean, and how are they different from each other?
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Frequency adverbs tell us how often something happens. Think of them like a scale, from 100% of the time all the way down to 0% of the time. Today we're focusing on 3 spots on that scale: always, usually, and sometimes.
Exactly. And here's a simple way to think about it. Always means 100% of the time, every time, no exceptions. Usually means about 80 or 90% of the time, most of the time, but not always. And sometimes means maybe 30 to 50% of the time. It happens, but not regularly.
Let's look at the sentence structure first, because this is where a lot of learners make a mistake with word order. The basic formula is subject plus frequency adverb plus main verb. So for example, I always drink coffee in the morning. Subject is I, the adverb is always, and the verb is drink.
Here are a few more examples so you can hear the pattern. She usually takes the bus to work. They sometimes eat dinner late. He always checks his phone first thing in the morning. We usually watch a movie on weekends. Can you hear the position? The adverb comes right before the main verb.
Now, always is the strongest one. When you say you always do something, you're saying there are no exceptions. Like, I always lock the door before I leave. Every single time. It would feel wrong or surprising if I didn't.
Right. And always can also be used to describe someone's personality or habits, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes a bit frustrating. Like, he's always helping people. That's sweet. But she's always complaining. Not so sweet, you know?
Ha, yeah, we all know someone like that. Now here's a question for you listening. Can you think of something you always do? Not usually, always. Every single time, no exceptions. Write it in the comments. It could be something small. I always say good morning to my neighbor. Or, I always put sugar in my tea.
Love that. Now let's talk about usually. Usually is a little more relaxed than always. It means something is your normal habit or routine, But sometimes things change. Like, I usually wake up at 7. Most days, that's true. But maybe on weekends you sleep a little later, right?
Exactly. And this is super important. Usually is perfect for talking about routines without sounding too rigid. It sounds very natural. I usually have lunch at my desk. We usually go to the gym on Tuesdays. It leaves a little room for life to happen.
And the negative form, this is something people get wrong sometimes. In a negative sentence, you put the adverb in the same position. I don't always agree with my boss. She doesn't usually eat breakfast. The don't or doesn't comes before the adverb, and the adverb still comes before the main verb.
One more thing about word order. With the verb to be, the rule is a little different. When you use am, is, are, was, were, the frequency adverb comes after the verb, not before. So it's, I am always tired on Mondays, not, I always am tired. Let's say that together. I am always tired on Mondays. She is usually on time. They are sometimes late.
Can you try making a sentence with to be and one of these adverbs? Pause right now and say one out loud. Something like, I am usually, or she is always. Don't just listen, speak. That's how English sticks. We'll be here when you come back.
So to quickly review, always is 100% every time. Usually is most of the time, your normal habit. And both come before the main verb, but after the verb to be. Got it?
Perfect. Keep that in mind because now we're going to dig into sometimes, and it's a little more flexible than the other two.
All right, let's talk about sometimes. And I want to start by saying sometimes is actually really powerful. It's not weak just because it means less often. It adds honesty and nuance to what you're saying.
That's such a good point. When you say sometimes, you're saying, hey, this is real life. Things aren't always the same. Like, I sometimes feel nervous before speaking English. That's honest. That's relatable. And it sounds very natural.
Now here's where sometimes is a little different from always and usually. It's more flexible in terms of where it can go in the sentence. You can say, sometimes I go for a walk after dinner. And that works. You can put it at the beginning of the sentence with sometimes.
That's right. You can say, I sometimes go for a walk after dinner. That's also correct. Or even at the end, I go for a walk after dinner sometimes. All three positions are possible with sometimes. It's very flexible. But with always and usually, it's almost always best to keep them in the middle, before the main verb.
Let me give you some real-life situations where sometimes sounds perfect. Imagine a friend asks you, do you cook at home? You could say, sometimes. It depends on how busy I am. That's a very natural, conversational answer.
Or imagine you're at work and your boss asks, do you ever work from home? And you say, yes, sometimes I work from home on Fridays. Sounds totally natural and professional.
Now let's compare the three in the same situation, because I think this really helps. Someone asks, do you exercise? Here are your three options. You could say, I always exercise. I go to the gym every single day. Or, I usually exercise. Most weeks I go 3 or 4 times. Or, I sometimes exercise, maybe once or twice a month when I have time.
See how each one paints a completely different picture. Always sounds like a very committed person. Usually sounds like someone with a solid routine. And sometimes sounds like someone who's being honest. Hey, life gets busy.
Okay, here's a little practice for you. I'm going to describe a situation, and you decide. Always, usually, or sometimes. Ready? Situation 1. You eat breakfast every single day without fail. Which word?
That's always. Every single day, no exceptions. I always eat breakfast.
Situation 2. Most days you walk to work, but sometimes you take the bus if it's raining.
That one is usually. I usually walk to work, because it's your normal habit, but not every single time.
Situation 3. About once or twice a week, you watch a movie in the evening. Not every day, not most days, just occasionally.
Sometimes. I sometimes watch a movie in the evening. Perfect.
I love that. Now here's a challenge for you in the comments. Write 3 sentences about your daily routine. One with always, one with usually, and one with sometimes. This is such great practice. We love reading your sentences.
To review this section, always is every time, no exceptions. Usually is your normal habit with some exceptions. Sometimes is occasional, and it's more flexible in where it sits in the sentence. Now, let's look at some extra tips and related expressions that will really take your English to the next level.
Okay, so now that you understand the 3 main words, I want to introduce some related expressions that native speakers use all the time. These will make your English sound even more natural and varied.
Yes, because in real conversation, we don't just say always, usually, and sometimes. We also say things like all the time, most of the time, every now and then, once in a while, hardly ever, and never. These all fit on that same frequency scale.
Let's look at these one by one. All the time is similar to always. It means something happens very frequently, constantly, like, my sister calls me all the time. It's a little more informal and conversational than always.
Most of the time is very close to usually. You can often swap them. I usually cook at home, and I cook at home most of the time mean basically the same thing. The difference is that most of the time tends to go at the end of the sentence, while usually goes in the middle.
Then we have every now and then and once in a while. These are both similar to sometimes, maybe even a little less frequent. Like, we go out for dinner once in a while, or every now and then I'll treat myself to some chocolate.
I love those expressions. They sound so natural. And then at the lower end of the scale, we have hardly ever, which means almost never, very rarely. I hardly ever watch TV. And of course, never, which is 0% of the time. I never eat spicy food.
Now here's a really important tip about formality. In formal or written English, like in emails or reports, usually and sometimes are perfectly fine. But all the time or every now and then are much more casual and are better for everyday conversation.
So if you're writing an email to your manager, you'd say, I usually submit reports on Friday, not, I send reports every now and then. That sounds too casual for a professional setting. Context matters so much.
Let's do a little mini practice. I'll say something and you respond with a sentence using one of today's expressions. Ready? Tell me, how often do you check your phone?
Oh, I check my phone all the time. Honestly, too much. How about you?
I usually check it in the morning and at lunch, but I try not to look at it in the evening. Sometimes I fail at that, though.
Ha! That's very relatable. Okay, now you try. Pause the episode and answer this. How often do you speak English outside of studying? Use one of today's expressions. Say it out loud. I usually speak English when, or I sometimes speak English at. Go ahead, We'll wait.
Great! And here's one more tip. These frequency expressions are amazing for describing personality and character, too. You can say, she's always smiling. She has a warm, happy personality. He's usually pretty calm. He doesn't get stressed often. They're sometimes difficult to work with. Not always, but it happens.
Using frequency adverbs this way makes your descriptions much more balanced and honest. Instead of saying, he's a difficult person, which is very absolute, you say, he's sometimes difficult. Much more nuanced and natural.
And a great tip for speaking politely. If you want to soften a criticism or feedback, use sometimes. It's less harsh. Your reports are sometimes a little hard to follow. Sounds much more diplomatic than, your reports are always confusing. Small word, big difference in tone.
Absolutely. So, to review this section, we expanded our toolkit with expressions like all the time, most of the time, every now and then, once in a while, and hardly ever. We talked about formal versus informal usage, and we saw how these words help us describe personality and give polite feedback. Amazing stuff.
Okay, here's the part of the show I always look forward to. And I say that as someone who has made every single one of these mistakes myself. Common mistakes time.
Same. I remember being so confused by these when I was first learning grammar rules. Let's make sure you don't have to go through the same confusion. We've got 4 really common mistakes to cover today.
Mistake number 1. Putting the frequency adverb in the wrong position. This is the most common one. Some learners say, I drink always coffee in the morning, putting always after the verb. But that's not correct. The right sentence is, I always drink coffee in the morning. The adverb goes before the main verb, not after it.
And remember the exception with the verb to be. I am always tired, not I always am tired. It's a small switch, but it matters.
Mistake number 2. Using always when you mean usually. This makes your English sound a bit extreme. If you say, I always eat lunch at 1 o'clock, but sometimes you eat at 12:30 or 1:30, that's not really always. That's usually. Native speakers might think you're being overly precise, or they might correct you.
Right. Always is a strong word. Save it for things that are truly 100% true. If there's even a small chance you might do it differently sometimes, go with usually.
Mistake number 3. Forgetting that sometimes can go at the start of the sentence, but always and usually can't. So you can say, sometimes I feel nervous. But it sounds unusual to say, always I feel nervous at the start of a sentence. With always and usually, keep them in the middle. I always feel nervous, or I usually feel nervous.
Now this one trips people up. Let's look at it side by side. Sometimes I cook dinner at home. Correct. Always I cook dinner at home. That sounds strange. I always cook dinner at home. Much better. The position change is small, but it makes a big difference to how natural you sound.
Mistake number 4. Using always in questions when you want to ask about general habits. Some learners say, do you always go to the gym? When what they really mean is, do you usually go to the gym? Always in a question can sound like you're surprised or even a little accusatory. Like, wait, every single time, without exception?
Yes. Do you usually go to the gym? Is the friendlier, more natural question for everyday conversation. Save do you always for situations where you genuinely want to confirm it's 100%. Like, do you always lock the door when you leave? That's a real always question.
These mistakes are so normal, by the way. Every learner makes them. The fact that you're listening to this episode means you're already ahead. Just keep practicing, and these will become second nature.
Here's a practice challenge for the mistakes section. Which sentence is correct? I usually am late for meetings, or I am usually late for meetings. Think about the to be rule. The answer is, I am usually late for meetings. Great job if you got that. Keep practicing and these patterns will stick.
All right, it's practice time. This is one of my favorite parts. I'm going to give you some situations, and for each one, you choose the best option. And I really want you to say your answers out loud. Don't just think them. Speaking is how you build the habit.
Ready? Let's go.
Situation 1. Your friend asks how often you read books. You read for about 20 minutes most evenings, but not every single night. Which sounds more natural? Option A. I always read before bed. Option B. I usually read before bed. Or option C. I sometimes read before bed.
This one is option B. I usually read before bed. It's most nights, which is your normal habit, but maybe not every night. Always would be too strong, and sometimes would suggest it's only occasional.
Situation 2. Your colleague asks if you eat lunch at your desk. You do it occasionally, maybe once or twice a week. Option A. I always eat lunch at my desk. Option B. I usually eat lunch at my desk. Option C. I sometimes eat lunch at my desk.
Option C. I sometimes eat lunch at my desk. Once or twice a week is occasional. That's sometimes territory. If you said always or usually, your colleague might be surprised when they see you eating in the kitchen.
Situation 3. You want to say that you have never, ever missed a dentist appointment. You're very proud of this. Which would you choose? Option A. I sometimes miss dentist appointments. Option B. I usually go to the dentist on time. Option C. I always go to the dentist on time.
That's option C. I always go to the dentist on time. You're describing something 100% consistent. You never miss it. This is exactly the right moment for always.
Situation 4. Your partner asks why the kitchen is a mess. You want to admit that you don't clean it as regularly as you should. Option A. I always clean the kitchen. Option B. I usually clean the kitchen. Option C. I sometimes clean the kitchen.
This depends on how honest you want to be. But if you're being truthful that it doesn't happen very often, option C. I sometimes clean the kitchen. And maybe follow it with, I'll do it tonight, I promise.
Ha! Now here's your final challenge. Create your own sentence for each word. One sentence with always, one with usually, and one with sometimes. All about your real life. Post them in the comments. We genuinely love reading your examples, and it helps you practice so much more than just listening.
And don't worry about being perfect. The goal is to use the language, not to write a perfect textbook sentence. Real conversation beats perfect grammar every time. Be brave, speak up, and you'll improve so much faster.
Okay, wow. What an episode. I feel like we covered so much today, and I hope it all makes sense now. Let's bring it all together.
We covered 3 key frequency adverbs today. First, always, which means 100% of the time, every time, no exceptions. It goes before the main verb and after the verb to be. Second, usually, which means most of the time, your normal habit. Same word order rules apply. And third, sometimes, which means occasionally, and it's more flexible. It can go at the beginning, middle, or end of a sentence.
We also expanded our vocabulary with expressions like all the time, most of the time, every now and then, once in a while, and hardly ever. These all live on the same frequency scale and will make your speaking sound so much more natural and varied.
And we tackled the 4 most common mistakes: wrong word order, using always when you mean usually, starting sentences incorrectly, and choosing the wrong word for questions. You now know how to avoid all of them.
Here's a question for you to think about and maybe share in the comments. Which of these 3 words do you think you use incorrectly most often? Is it always, usually, or sometimes? Reflecting on your own habits is such a powerful way to improve.
We'd also love to know, what's something you sometimes do that surprises people? Something unexpected. Share it in the comments below. It's a great way to practice today's lesson and connect with other learners in the Common English Decoded community.
And if this episode helped you, please give it a like. It really supports the channel and helps more learners find Common English Decoded. Share it with a friend who's learning English. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode.
You are doing such an amazing job. Learning a language is not easy, and every episode you listen to, every sentence you practice, every comment you write, it all adds up. We're so proud of every single one of you. Keep going, keep speaking, and remember, progress matters more than perfection.
That's all from us today. Thank you so much for spending time with us on Common English Decoded. It means the world to us.
Take care, keep practicing, and we'll see you next time.